Hi there, this is Daniel Harris here with the first of what might be a series of occasional big chats. I am a minister working with the United Reformed Church in the northwest of England. I am also a former youth and community worker with over 30 years of experience under my belt. And I like chatting. Now, there are two complaints that we often hear about the church. One complaint is that the church is out of touch with society. And the other is that theology is dull and boring and should be left to the academics. Now, the former Bishop of Bradwell, Laurie Green, seeks to address both complaints with his book, which is called Let's Do Theology. Now, don't let that name put you off, but in response, Green offers a resource called the Pastoral Cycle, and in theory at least, this offers us the opportunity to get closer to our communities and to engage in some good old-fashioned grassroots theology, which is hopefully both exciting and stimulating. Green's main argument is that theology isn't just an academic pursuit. It should be done by everyday people and it should achieve something very tangible. He argues that theology should address, and I quote, issues of human freedom and fulfillment at personal, communal and structural levels of society. In doing so, people become active subjects of their situations and not just pawns in the game of life. Some synods in the United Reformed Church are giving Laurie Green's Pastoral Cycle serious consideration and are recommending that it's adopted at local church level. Our own missional partnership is working on the plant, grow and harvest strategy over the next few years. And so, Laurie Green's Pastoral Cycle claims to address some big issues that our churches are facing. Could this be of help to us? Let's find out right now. Laurie Green proposes a model of reflection called the Pastoral Cycle. If you take the idea that life is a journey, this resource will look like a continual spiral which allows you to examine that journey. It can very easily be used for personal reflection, but Green recommends that this works best when used by groups and communities. The Pastoral Cycle has 4 very simple stages, or milestones. The first is experience, identifying your immediate circumstances and the felt needs resulting from living in those conditions. The second is exploration, a deep dive into the causes of those circumstances and their effects on the wider community. The third is reflection and analysis of how the Christian faith relates and might respond to these circumstances. And fourthly and finally, there is action, a very specific and deliberate response to those circumstances as informed by the Christian faith. So in a nutshell, we talk about our experiences, we explore the facts, we reflect on what we've found out, and we choose to do something. And then we repeat and we go through it all again. The Pastoral Cycle in itself is not original. It draws inspiration from David Kolb's experiential learning cycle and has its roots in liberation theology. Such models of learning have been used successfully in churches, education, and youth and community work for many decades. However, Green repurposes this model to encourage serious theological reflection. In doing so, communities have the potential to take control of their own circumstances and directly engage with the Christian faith. So let's look more closely at Laurie Green's Pastoral Cycle. The first milestone on the pastoral cycle is experience. We all have experience in life. We all know when life goes well for us, and we know what it's like when we've had to battle obstacles along the way. This first milestone asks us to have a conversation about the problems and obstacles we face that might be preventing our communities from thriving. These early conversations draw on our direct experience and emotions generated living in those conditions. These conversations are specifically first impressions rather than a deep analytical study of the problem. From these conversations, a group seeks to identify one common shared issue which they wish to tackle. To enable this, we need to initially think about creating a safe space which can allow these conversations to flow freely. This means facilitating a group that has open relationships to dialogue with one another without inhibition. A group that is able to share their lived experiences, and a group that is able to identify an issue to solve collectively. If a group doesn't have these features, some groundwork might be needed to promote group confidence and cohesion. But once a group has started to form, it can start brainstorming ideas and focus on an issue to tackle. Once an issue has been identified that is worthy of the group's attentions and efforts, we can move on to the second stage. The second milestone of the pastoral cycle is called exploring. This is where we move from first impressions into a deep dive into the facts and stories surrounding the issue we wish to explore. This process seeks to initially create a pen picture of the issue, which will be increasingly filled out with more detail as the picture starts to emerge. The first level of inquiry might look at the symptoms of the issue being explored. This could involve investigative work that can go in any direction, including economics, geography, history, or religious research. This research could also be experiential. For example, if a group was researching local homelessness, some group members could try sleeping out for one night and reporting back to the group. The second level of research might examine the causes of the issue being explored. This could explore circumstances at the local level that are affected by drivers and trends at regional, national, or even international levels. This deep dive also encourages us to look at the values and the ideologies that are behind the stories and the data. This examination of the facts can go two ways. While it is an examination of the world around us, it will inevitably become an exploration of each group members in their world. This deep dive into the data also juggles the facts with our emotions. Of these two realities, we need to be mindful. But Green comments that groups can find this stage of the pastoral cycle highly enjoyable and deeply informative. now come to our third milestone, which is exploring. This section marks the difference between Kolb's learning theory and Green's pastoral cycle, as it encourages reflecting upon the information gathered through God's unique point of view. Or, as Green describes it, looking for the divine within our experience. Now, this reflecting of our findings so far through the lens of the Christian faith is of utmost importance. It is so easy to skip this stage and jump on to the next milestone. It is a reminder that, against the noise of the world, God often speaks to us through the stillness and through a quiet voice. This encourages us to slow down, to pause, to be still and to be attentive. Green reminds us that we have a deep depository of resources to help us in this stage. We can draw on the deep well of Christian tradition, including our history, liturgies, the Bible and parables of Jesus, meditations, prayers, hymns and doctrines. Green uses the illustration of an optical illusion created by two faces to describe what he's trying to achieve. One face visualizes facing the situation that the group has examined so far. The other face visualizes facing the Christian faith. And the space in between these faces is a new shape created by these two situations. Green is encouraging the group to step into this new space, as it were to hear a new voice. This new voice emerging from between the two situations is in itself quiet and fragile, and requires its own space for further consideration. We need to be sure that it holds consistency and integrity within the wider Christian witness. If it achieves this, this can be documented as a new voice witnessing to the issue that the group has so far been exploring. The Reverend Martin Luther King famously said, "I have a dream." Likewise, the group is encouraged to articulate their own dream, which will lead to an agreed action that can improve the lives of those who are afflicted by the issue identified. This part of the pastoral cycle is of immense importance. This action is how the kingdom of God is expressed in concrete terms, both for the group taking part and for the communities where they live. So, what do we think of Laurie Green's pastoral cycle? I think it's got potential to generate what is known as local theology. Imagine a spectrum where the teachers of the church are at one end of the spectrum and the community at the other. The local church exists in the middle, hopefully connecting the two with a bespoke local theology which is unique to the experiences and the stories of that community. If, however, a church has lost the ability to connect the institution of the church to the community, I believe that the pastoral cycle offers a resource for eldership teams to build a new bridge over the gap. The pastoral cycle also offers existing ministries within churches a chance to review, revitalise and reconnect what they offer to local communities. However, this book also gives us a nudge and a reminder. In the busyness of life, and the stress of running a church, it is so easy to miss hearing the voice of God. God doesn't always adopt the strategy of turning up the volume to maximum to shout over the noise of the world to get our attention. Instead, he speaks quietly. This requires of us to slow down, to be still, to take notice, and to prayerfully reflect upon what we see and hear. We can so easily miss this out, and I think that Laurie Green's Pastoral Cycle, if anything, it points us back to this. So let's pause and let's take time to discern the voice of God. I'm Daniel Harris, a minister with the United Reformed Church, and this may be the first or the last of several big chats. God bless you, and see you on the road.